All right, now we're back up.
All right. Well, as I was saying, we're staying on the issue of the economy. Unemployment rate stood at 5% in September, a healthy number that concealed a host of deeper problems. One of them perplexing is the rise of non working men. About 15% of prime age men do not have jobs, up from about 5% in the 1960s. Most of them are not for work, so they are not counted in the unemployment rate. But they are a draw on the economy. They do not produce, but they continue to consume. In earlier generation, they might have found factories or other blue collar occupations. Now they spend on average almost 6 hours a day watching television. Economic growth is an incomplete corrective. Many non working men are ill equipped for jobs that are available today.
So one thing that we do have to do is look at the problems within the community of which they live in, because most of African American and minority men live in communities that the median household income is just as little as $10,000. So one thing that we do have to do is create a federal program that will try to get more men, especially African American colored men, to be able to apply for a job and get the job. It can be a minimum wage job or a job that's above minimum wage. That's up to them, whatever job that they want to apply for. But it is very important that we look at the specifics and look as to where we are going to head in the direction of to bring more jobs to those men.
That's all?
Hmm.
Okay, President Martinez, your time starts now.
Well, I think there's a couple different things that are affecting this problem. Now, if we look at it from a holistic point of view, we have to understand why are they not getting jobs. One option might be that they're simply not looking for work, as you had mentioned. Another one could be they simply don't possess the skills necessary for the job requirements they're applying for. So something that we need to look at is increasing funding for job training in at-risk communities, whether or not it is based on race or color, as my opponent seems to think. We need to focus on where high unemployment is. We need to focus on what skills that community is lacking and what jobs in the area are looking for a skill set for a person. If we're able to knock a couple of those off a checklist, I can guarantee you unemployment is going to go significantly down very quickly. It's going to require funding from a federal and state government to do that. We're more than that. We gave money, for example, to the state of Georgia with Governor Lampros, and he has seen unemployment in his state go down significantly. We've also seen the same trends in both Texas and Arizona. So we're very fortunate to see that trend actually starting to go downward, and we're looking to scale this to a national level. Our plan's going to be robust. We wanted to try it out in a couple areas to see how it would work. But I think we're fully prepared to go national on this endeavor very quickly.
Okay, any rebuttals?
Nope.
No rebuttals? Also, for the record, John Lampers is not the governor of Georgia, he's the attorney general of Georgia. Next question, we're going to
All right, can I do questions now?
We're going to the next question.
Yep. That is election integrity. All right. So our first question on that. This election is a very close election. Obviously, it could go either way. It's probably one of the closest elections we've had since season 2. Now, will both of you accept the results, even if it doesn't go your way?
Live stream dropped off again.
Oh, hold on.
Well, can I answer this question?
What was that? No, Mr. Martinez goes first now. I'm keeping track of who goes first. Mr. Martinez, this question is directed at you first, and then we'll go to Mr. D. Christopher. Can you answer the question, please?
Okay. So what was it? if we would commit to recognizing the results.
Yes.
Is that the
Correct.
general question?
Correct.
Yeah. Yes. I don't think it's democratic not to. But I disagree with the notion that the election is going to be close or that polling is close. So, but yes, I will accept the election results, regardless of how big I win.
What if you lose? That's the question. That was the question that was asked.
That's not going to happen. But it was a good try.
Mr. President, will you please answer the question? If you were to lose, are you going to accept the results of the election?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
I mean, I've already answered it, but yes.
Who the hell is the deacon?
I don't care. So now to my next question on election integrity.
Since he was watching.
Okay, well,
Russia-
have Mr. D. Christopher's same question.
Looking at the current polls.
Yes.
No. No, you are not. I'm sorry, but it's not going to happen. I'm leading the polls by 6 points, and with the fact that 53% of Republicans are registered, and only 40% are Democrats. So take that as you will. And also regarding our elections, it's also come to my campaign's attention that the president is interfering with our election. He has conspired with the governor of Georgia and the attorney general, John Lampros, on setting strict guidelines for voting in Georgia. The governor of Georgia will now be sending out the National Guard to polling stations.
Mr. E. Christopher, I just want to point something out for the record. Again, Mr. Lampros is the Secretary of State.
But didn't you just say to Sam that he's the attorney general?
Excuse me. What evidence do you have to suggest collusion between the?
Because John
Attorney
Lampros,
General?
because I have a screenshot from the secretary. No, when I win the presidency, you will be going to jail, and that's a fact.
That's
Okay.
Whoa!
White House,
All
that's-
right,
Go
this
ahead.
debate is heated.
I will win.
Gentlemen, let's calm things down.
Yeah, let's be gentlemen about
Keep
this.
things up again because we're going to the issue of immigration. Ko Yamakawa, a college student from Dublin, Ohio, said he has a friend whose parents are being deported in 2 years because of President Martinez's immigration policies. Yamakawa wants to know what the candidates can do to help his friend's parents and undo the past. How would you, the question, this goes for both candidates, how would you galvanize Congress so that they can pass relief and supportive legislation for refugees and undocumented immigrants if you are indeed intending on tackling that issue with Congress? This question is going to go for Mr. D. Christopher first, and then we're going to Mr. Martinez. Mr. D. Christopher, your time is now.
I'm glad you asked that question. So the president recently signed a bill by Senator Catherine Pugh of Pennsylvania that will implement a zero tolerance policy at the southern border towards undocumented immigrants. I don't know if the president knows this, but thousands of children are now separated from their families because of this. And if we all of the work when it comes to immigration that the president has put into his agenda, it has been nothing but unjust and inhumane, and he has done nothing but pass unjust laws to bring the American people down, especially when it comes to immigration. We are seeing protests and riots all around this country because of the president's, again, incompetent immigration policies. He's also endorsing and supporting his little Republican minions. They literally said, shoot them and kill them to undocumented immigrants and illegal immigrants coming into this country. First of all, what person says that? Who wishes death on, especially on other Americans, especially when you are supporting a senator who literally said socialist Americans should die? That's just, but.
Are you done, Mr. D. Christopher?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Mr. Martinez, answer the question,
okay.
and then we'll go to rebuttals. Mr. Martinez.
Well, first, I want to rebut the opinion of my opponent here that we are separating families at the border. There is no evidence to suggest that.
Yes,
and
there
actually,
is.
if you read the
Yes,
policy,
there is.
are we going to allow people to interrupt? Is that
No,
the
no,
moderator
no,
in the
Mr.
Wyatt.
way?
Christopher, please do not interrupt.
You will get your time, Mr. DeChristopher. Thank you for pointing that out, President Martinez.
Okay, moderator, shut up. It's still his time. Come on.
No, you shut up, moderator.
Thank you, Ms. Thank you, Ms. Sikorsky. Anyway, our immigration policies do not separate families at the border, and it's not in the bill whatsoever. So that notion is false. And my opponent's saying that I am endorsing people that have said, "quote shoot them dead." I actually haven't posted an endorsement of a single Senate or governor candidate in this cycle, so I don't know where that idea is coming from. And he also mentioned the fact that we should, quote, shoot them dead, referring to we would be shooting American citizens. Well, if you're crossing the border illegally, you're not necessarily an American citizen. Not that I'm condoning that activity, but that's a false narrative right there. We built border security very well. We're rehauling it again in the next 24 hours, actually, to increase our border security. And we are not going to go back on our immigration policy because our immigration policy has actually prevented a pandemic from coming to this country. So if we want disease to come rampant through our country, then I suggest you
Okay,
vote
Mr.
for my
Martinez,
opponent.
you're done. I'm very sure that you people want a rebuttal, so Mr. D. Christopher, 30 seconds, go.
You people.
The president, Mr. President, you do realize that thousands of those illegal immigrants that that your Republican colleagues that you work with, that they want to shoot them dead, and that thousands of those immigrants are children, little children. And when it comes to the immigration bill that you have signed that did separate children from their parents, there's literally an article written by the Washington Herald that says that that bill did in fact separate children from their parents at the border.
Okay, Mr. D. Christopher, you're done. You're done. Your time has expired. Your time has expired. Would the president like a rebuttal?
I mean, if we're believing anything that's written in a newspaper, we're at a very bad point in American history. What my opponent is spewing out of his mouth is simply not true. And I encourage people to read the bills and executive orders I've passed, and you will clearly find who the liar is. And it's my opponent, Mr. DeChristopher. So if he wants to continue lying, by all means, we can have a lie-off if you want. But, I'm not going to stand here and pretend like my immigration policy is something that completely tears families apart, because it doesn't. It simply doesn't.
Okay.
And I also, but very, very quickly, if I may, because I had a remainder of time, if they cross the border illegally, they're fully and will be prosecuted according to law. That's simple law, and if you can't understand or recognize that, that's a problem.
Okay, we're going to
Mr.
move on.
President, do you realize?
To,
No. I'll let rebuttal.
you got 30 seconds, and then Mr. Martinez will get another 30 if
Mr. President, you do realize that that bill is really harming children as young as 2 years older. And not only that, but again, you have people who are supporting you, and people, even though you haven't endorsed them or whatever, you are supporting them because you are liking all of their posts, and that is a fact. And they are saying, shoot illegal immigrants dead, including illegal children. So what do you have to say about that? And if you can clearly read, I'm pretty sure that you can do, and if you go to the people who support you in the post that you like,
your time has expired.
They say that.
Your time has expired. We're going for one more rebuttal. Mr. President, one more rebuttal, and we're moving on.
I find it unfortunate that my opponent is not using his rebuttal time more effectively. I don't know how many more times I have to say this. The words of my supporters and opponents are not necessarily my views. Mr. Lampos,
but you're electing your post.
Mr. D. Christopher, this time.
My point.
Am I going to get a time reset because of that little
No, you're not.
right there?
Come on, wrap this up.
If you look at our policy, it's very strong policy. It's protected our country. And quite frankly, if we're going to have the border completely dismantled, which is what my opponent wants, then by all means,
Okay,
go ahead and
you're
vote for him. We're not
But
going
you
to allow-
realize that the bill that is
We're done.
that was
Both of
was
you are
written by
done.
Kathy
Excuse
Both
me,
of you
we're
are
moving on.
done.
his words.
We're
Shut
moving
up.
on. We're moving on. We're moving on. We're moving on. Okay, we're gonna move on from this issue. Today, more than 2 million Americans sit behind bars in our nation's correctional facilities. The overwhelmingly disproportionate number of whom are people of color and those with mental illness. As president, what do you plan to do to bring more attention to this issue and actually solve it? This time we're going for Mr. Christopher first.
Can
Yeah,
you repeat that question?
time
You
starts
were
now.
cutting off a little bit.
Yes, I can repeat the question. Today, more than 2 million Americans sit behind bars in our nation's correctional facilities, the overwhelmingly disproportionate number of whom are people of color and those with mental illness. As president, what do you plan to do to bring attention to this issue and actually solve it? Your time starts now.
Well, when I win the presidency, because I will be working with correctional facilities officials to create a piece of legislation that will form a federal investigation on correctional institutions all around this country. We are seeing every day, we are having officials, correctional facility guards inside of those prisons who are committing criminal activities against the people of color and the people with disabilities and mental illnesses in those prisons. So a bill that I will write is a bill that will, one, simply be enacted to find the source of the criminal activity that's committed by the people that are supposed to be looking out for those prisoners instead of harming them and, committing, again, criminal activities and offenses against them.
Is that it? Okay. President Martinez, your turn. The time starts now.
I just want to point out to the American people that my opponent here has acknowledged that we have a criminal justice problem, specifically a corrections problem. But neither him nor the party he's representing today are doing anything to address the biggest problem in corrections, which is private prisons and private correctional facilities. We are taking action here today to shut down all private and corporate owned correctional facilities effective at the end of the fiscal year. Nothing has been said on this issue, but this is a major reason why people are incarcerated for much longer, because companies are able to profit off of people in prison. We need very strong and very particular legislation to address correctional change, but we can't do that while also allowing for people who profit off of prison and incarceration to continue to run these operations. So that's what we're going to do. That's going to be effective today. We're going to sign the executive order right after this debate. Said, been done and delivered. I'd like to thank Vice President McCann for that. He also gave some great insight on that. But that's just the very first step to solving this problem, is ending the profiteering off of people who made bad decisions in life. That's the first step, and it's going to be the first of many steps we take towards addressing correctional facilities.
Okay, any rebuttals?
Yes, I do have a rebuttal. Mr.
Time
President,
starts
I believe the part of the moderator's question was about the 2 million Americans who are mostly African American or Hispanic or Latino that are being discriminated against in prisons. You have not mentioned at all that topic within your answer. So can you clarify?
Well, it's not a problem only affecting African American or Hispanic Americans. It's not a color issue. It's not a race issue.
But it is a color issue because when you look at the
Are
statistics,
the moderators going to actually do their job and silence him while I'm speaking, or is that
First of all,
not going to be a problem?
First of all,
Yo,
the president will continue his rebuttal. We'll go back to Mr. D. Christopher. I just want to put on the record, part of the question is actually addressing the overwhelmingly disproportionate amount of African Americans and people with mental disabilities that end up in the correctional system. So yes, in this scenario, it is indeed a color issue. Mr. Martinez will continue with his rebuttal.
Well, if we're looking at 2 million people, I'm pretty sure that, that is not encompassing the full prison population as it's being portrayed. I don't know exactly what the figure is. If moderators have that available, that'd be really great to use. But again, I think if we're focusing on the issue of having race or color be the main focus of reforming our prison system or a correctional facility problem, you're not doing anything besides affirmative action and giving preferential treatment. What we're going to do is we're going to reform the system entirely, the correctional facility problem, and we're also going to pair that with criminal justice reform.
Martinez, your time has expired.
Department of Justice.
Time has expired. Mr. D. Christopher, and then we're going to move on to the next issue.
move on to the next question. I'm done.
Okay. The next issue has to do with identity. This is the last one. Gally Gordon's grandparents fled the Russian Empire and came to the United States before World War I. They said this to the Washington Herald. We're concerned about the resurgence of anti-Semitism across the United States that has turned deadly in the past few months. And his question to each of the candidates is, what is their plan? What is your plan to combat this rising hatred? Mr. Martinez gets the first say. Your time starts now.
Well, I mean, it all goes back to what we think of a legal system. It kind of ties into the previous question about correctional facilities and criminal justice reform. But to go specific to our friend's question over here, it's going to be something that we echoed in our very first campaign. We are going to rule on law and order. Quite simple, plainly put. Without law and order, this is going to continue to happen. And we've hired and appointed folks to the criminal justice system in judicial courtrooms that are very particular and will prosecute to the fullest extent when necessary. And I've made it a directive to the Department of Justice that any sort of crime relating to whether it's a hate crime or an act of violence, depending on the severity, or I've given full authorization on any and all hate crimes to be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, whether it's on a state level or a federal level. We need to go after these people. We're making it very well known, to the American people here today. It's not acceptable in our country. And, we will prosecute as much as we can. It's simple as that. In terms of protection, that's something that we're going to have to look into with our criminal justice reform as well. And it's going to have to be in coordination with police departments as well as state level law enforcement. So there's a lot of moving parts that need to be addressed to fix the issue systematically. But it's not something that we're not willing to do. It's something that we're very able to do, and it's something we're actually working on.
Your time has expired.
Once again, with the Department of Justice.
Your time has expired. Mr. D. Christopher, your time starts now.
Can you repeat the question again?
Yes. The question is, I'm just going to repeat the question, not the person. Gally Gordon who is an immigrant from Russia and who is Jewish, is concerned with the resurgence of anti-Semitism across the United States in the past few months. And his question to both of the candidates is, what is your plan to combat this rising hatred?
Okay, so me and the president might disagree on lots of things, but when he said law and order, I completely agree with that. hate has no country has no part in the United States of America whatsoever. We will not tolerate any hate towards any person based off their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, etc. First, that would not happen. So when it comes to my plan to combat those issues, first of all, we need to have an alliance between the federal government and the executive branch and local law enforcement agencies so that they can better combat these crimes that are being committed every day.
Okay, any rebuttals? Any rebuttals? Oh, no rebuttals? Well, we'll continue on to the next issue of the day. This question is being submitted by an LGBTQ plus rights activist. And the question that they have is how are each of the candidates going to protect the LGBTQ community through actions and policies, specifically ones that protect trans women of color? This question goes to Mr. D. Christopher first. Mr. D. Christopher.
So when it comes to the LGBTQIA plus community, that has a deep place in my heart. As an LGBTQIA individual myself, I understand the everyday struggles that they go through, especially colored trans women. Just last week, I believe, in Los Angeles, we've had 3 colored trans women attacked by a gang of 10 men who were bullying them based on their sexual orientation. That is not okay. Again, like I said, hate has no part in this country whatsoever, and we need to acknowledge the fact that LGBTQIA plus individuals around this whole country, this whole nation, is being attacked based either on the fact that they're either African American and they're a part of the community, or just because they're trans. That's not okay. So when it comes to my plan to combat these issues, we need to source what the problem is, which I've already outlined what the problem is. And we need to create some sort of legislation that will protect our citizens in the LGBTQIA community.
Okay. Mr. Martinez, you get the floor. Time starts now.
Okay. Well, having grown up in San Francisco, I think I'm very well qualified to understand this community pretty well. Having grown up around the community, very specific, to be specific. In terms of what we're going to do for the LGBT community specifically, it ties back to the previous question. We're going to prosecute hate crimes as severely as we possibly can. And in terms of getting it done legislatively, I'm working with Senator Adams right now to get a bill passed that will essentially restrict employers to not be able to fire or lower wages for individuals if they do identify on that spectrum. And we're going to also make sure that there's no discrimination anywhere for any community. That's something that's being a larger portion of the bill. That's why it's taking a little bit longer than we expected. We're also expecting future Senator Dominguez, to work on the bill as well. So, protections are very specific. We have to make sure that they're being covered from every angle. We're dotting our I's, crossing our T's, because we don't want this to be caught up in the judicial system whatsoever. And we're making sure it's comprehensive so that people feel protected as soon as it's signed into law. And we want to make sure that people do not walk out of their door afraid of something happening to them. So we've been a strong advocate for this community.
Okay, Mr. President, your time has expired. Any rebuttals?
None whatsoever. Me and the president are on the same page.
Okay, for once.
Also,
let's go to the issue. Let's go to the next question.
It'll be a quick 10 seconds.
No,
Alright.
it's over. The
Okay,
next,
Yeah.
thank you, Nicole.
next
We are going to
issue
be
is on
declaring-
issue. Excuse me, your
We are
time
going
has
to-
expired.
Quiet, Jeb. Quiet. Low energy, Jeb.
We will officially be declaring the month of June Pride Month.
We're going to
National
move on.
Month.
We're going to move on the issue of mental health. Joel Burks from Atlanta, Georgia, asked, wants to know about the candidates' plans to fund and combat the mental health and addiction crisis in America. Our question is going first to Mr. Martinez, I believe. And then we'll go to Mr. D. Christopher. Mr. Martinez, your time starts now.
This is a very particular issue. I think this impacts millions of Americans across the country. And I would even go as far to say that almost everybody has a connection to someone with a mental illness, whether it's presenting to their face or not. The crisis itself is something that's very tricky to not only diagnose, but also to treat. And something we're looking forward to doing, is working on healthcare legislation to ensure that mental health services are a right, not particularly an extra on an insurance plan. So that's one thing we're taking care of. We're also working to make sure that the VA is being funded appropriately, where a lot of our soldiers are coming back with mental disorders, or other physical ailments, whatever they may be. And that's another segment that has been disproportionately affected by mental illness. And I've actually went down to Dallas, Texas at the VA in Dallas to work with folks down there, as well as to sign orders to increase funding to the VA, as well as commit to the veterans that we're going to work for them harder. In terms of what we're going to do on a national scale, like I said, our healthcare plan is going to be coming out pretty soon. And we're going to make sure that people have access to mental health care, regardless of if they have insurance. Because we believe as an administration, mental health and mental health awareness is a right, and everyone should have a sound and competent mind if they're going to live in the United States.
As your time has expired. Mr. D. Christopher,
So when it
the floor
comes
is
to
yours.
when it comes to mental health illness, lots of it starts in school. And I know because when I was 5 years old, I had a mental illness myself. And I know how hard it can be for people who have some sort of mental illness like autism and etc. How they are constantly being pressured and stressed, especially by teachers on doing work that they know that they won't be able to do or complete at all. So one thing as president that I will be doing is proposing a bill that will be making sure to stop an end to discrimination in schools when it comes to mental health students. That's one thing that I've been taking to heart these past 4 days. I've been talking with multiple teachers and school administrators in Minneapolis on whether or not what approaches we should take to better improve the education qualities that mental health individuals in educational institutions are getting. So that is one thing that I would be looking forward to doing as president of the United States.
Okay, any rebuttals? No rebuttals. Okay, we're going to move on from this issue. We're going to move on to the issue of homelessness. Sarah Desplat from Pasadena, California, said that she became an advocate for the homeless 20 years ago when her brother first experienced homelessness due to mental illness. Every night, over 500,000 people are without home, Desplat told us. Her question to each of the candidates is, what are you going to do to address this crisis immediately, partnering with state and local governments? Mr. Christopher, I believe it is your turn now. You have the floor.
Homelessness is another very important issue that I do take to heart. we are seeing states like California and New York, for example, that are discriminating against homeless people and are placing these measures outside of establishments from stopping them from sleeping there. That is a problem. That's a huge problem, as we have um, over 1 million Americans that are homeless. One thing that, as president, I will be planning to do in a bipartisan effort with Republicans on the other side of the aisle is create a piece of legislation that will detail what discriminating against a homeless person is. Not only that, but creating a Housing for Homelessness Act that will create a federal program to give housing to homeless individuals. It only takes this New York Times article, and I actually did my own research. It only should take around $20 billion to end homelessness, the homeless crisis in America. That might not be the final estimate, but I will be doing a lot more research once I enter office. But that is one big thing that should be addressed and should be acknowledged, and one thing that we should find a solution for.
Okay, Mr. Martinez, your turn. You have the floor. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, being a native of California, I see homelessness every day when I step outside my door. I won't say I'm an expert on it, but I do see it literally every single day. It is something that should not be acceptable, but it is something that is being accepted, which is not right. I'm not going to go as far as to say we're going to guarantee housing. I wouldn't go that far. And I'm also going to dismiss the notion that there's a solution to homelessness, simply because we can estimate that there are, let's say, 750,000 Americans homeless today. Tomorrow it could be 746,000. The day after that it could be 753,000. The numbers are fluid because, again, you're not going to get an accurate number, and you're not going to be able to predict or even analyze a day-to-day fluctuation of homeless population. It's simply not possible. So the notion of ending homelessness is not possible. I think we need to get away from that idea. What I am in support of is permanent supportive housing, which is a plan that was initiated in San Francisco, and it's something that helps people get off the streets. And it's a set term. I believe it was 18 months of supportive housing that includes housing for 18 months, as well as rehabilitative services, mental health services. And it also helps the individuals get up off their feet and get them into a job. The government's job is to assist people, not necessarily to give them everything they need. Housing is not something that should be guaranteed by the American government.
Your time has expired. Okay.
I would like to rebuttal. Well, not more for a rebuttal, but a statement.
Any rebuttals?
Yes.
No, we're only doing rebuttals. We're not doing
Okay,
statements.
well, I would like to, again, I will like to rebuttal.
Are you going to rebut what he just said, or are you just going to give a statement?
Yes, I am. Yes.
You get 30 seconds.
So the fact that you said that it's not possible to give housing to all homeless people in America that need it, Mr. President, anything is possible, especially when it comes to helping the American people get off their feet and lifting them up. Anything is possible.
Okay. President Martinez, would you like to rebut?
Yeah. Again, I'd ask people to pay. Yeah, I'm in the same boat, I think, as you are at this point, Michael. Again, like the American people to listen to what I'm saying. I didn't say that it is not possible to provide homes for every homeless person. I said it's not possible to end homelessness. There's a very distinct difference. And, our administration for sure is not going to be in favor of giving every homeless person a house, because simply, what's the incentive of people that previously purchased a house? You're undercutting the market severely, and you're very much impacting millions of Americans that are homeowners across this country. So it's something that has to be taken very seriously. It has to be addressed in a practical manner, and it has to be something that's going to be addressed in a fair.
Your time has expired. Any more rebuttals?
Yes,
30 seconds.
I respectfully disagree. Well, first of all, part of ending homelessness is a piece of legislation called the Housing for Homelessness Act, which is something that I will be looking forward to getting passed through both chambers of Congress. Again, like I've said, that's you did say that there was a distinct definition in ending homelessness and housing for homelessness. Again, housing for the definition for housing for homelessness is underneath ending homelessness. So,
Okay. Any more rebuttal?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Go ahead, 30 seconds.
Again, you're not going. It's not possible to end homelessness on a nationwide or even a global scale. You could have, again, 1 million people homeless today, 2 people get foreclosed on tomorrow. There's 2 more people you have to build houses for, and it keeps going up and it keeps going down. It's not a sustainable idea. It's not a fiscally responsible idea, and there's no way to actually measure anything. Anyone can go on the street and claim they're homeless because they want a better house, or if they have an apartment and they want a house, they can claim they're homeless.
Okay.
Which is not the way to address it. Has people living on the streets.
Your
It
time
is
is
not
expired.
a reasonable
Your time is
option.
expired. Your time is expired. Your time is expired.
Your time has expired.
Last
Your time-
rebuttal. I assume that Mr. D. Christopher would like a rebuttal.
yes, I would.
Last rebuttal, and then we're going to move on. Go ahead.
So he gets more rebuttals than I do, just for clarification.
Oh, here we go
Go
again.
ahead.
You know what? You know what? No. You know what? Never mind. Because one thing that I'm not about to sit here and do is listen to someone complaining about
Because you don't know what the fuck you're talking about, Wyatt. Actually,
Okay,
stay
order,
on this
order,
topic.
order.
See, he's fussing. See,
Hey.
he's literally
We're going to move on to the next issue. We're going to move on to the next issue.
now.
The next issue.
You know that you can't take your anger.
Is pertaining to the economy. Sylvia McClellan, a volunteer at a food pantry in Flint, Michigan, said she meets a lot of people who are working but still can't make ends meet. She said she'd ask each of our candidates what they can do to provide additional help for these people. So that question is going to go first for Mr. President Martinez. Your time starts now.
Again, this goes back to the issue of skills in the country as well as education. We need to be preparing people to actually enter the workforce and not necessarily having people learn to the test. It's a problem that we've been trying to address for literal years at this point, and it's something that we're going to have to get done more than likely through executive order. The problem is people simply do not possess the skills required for certain jobs. And when people start to realize that not a job, then we'll quickly realize that the minimum wage as it currently stands is not justified, and it's not something that people can sustainably live on. In terms of raising the minimum wage, we have raised it to $12 an hour on a federal basis. So if we're looking at people not being able to live on $12 an hour times 40, times 4, essentially, that's a little bit concerning. I want to look at their spending habits. But again, we have to also look at, where are these people living? If you don't have a great skill set and you're not willing to go further in your education and you want to live in a city like Los Angeles, for example, common sense will tell you you're not going to make it there. And it's a harsh reality, but it's a reality when the numbers simply do not lie. So what we need to work on is making sure people have skills, making sure people have education, and making sure both the skills and the education they receive are prevalent, and making sure that they are sustainable for their career.
You're done. And for the record, I would like, just for clarification, what bill in particular raised the minimum wage at the federal level to $12 an hour resident?
I believe that was an order, or not an order, excuse me, a piece of legislation with.
Excuse me, you cut off?
I believe that was.
Legislation of what?
I believe that was a piece of legislation with Senator Pugh. If not, if it wasn't already a piece of legislation, I believe it's something that she's currently working on.
We will be fact checking that claim later on. Mr. D. Christopher, you get your chance to answer the question.
Look, $12 is not enough. Period. And the fact that we have the president who is saying that for the Americans that are earning, well, are yet to be earning $12 an hour times 40 and still are not able to make it, Mr. President, you do realize that almost half of those Americans are working part-time because they can't either fill in their full-time shift or because they can't find no job to work full-time. So, like I said, $12 is simply not enough to have a family, to have someone provide for their family and put food on the table and a roof over their heads.
Is that your statement?
Yes.
Okay, well, I assume that President Martinez would like a rebuttal.
Again, if people listen, they will understand where we are coming from. It is not necessarily that people are not being not matched the education or the skill set required for the role they are applying for. Once people realize there are minimum requirements for certain jobs, they will quickly realize they need to redevelop their skill set or pursue an education. We have lowered interest rates on federal loans for education, so there's really not much of an excuse. And, you know, if we're talking about people working part-time only, why are they only working part-time? We have to look into that as well.
I'll watch your rebuttal.
Your time has expired. Mr. D. Christopher, you got 30 seconds, so you start now.
You do realize that for the Americans that are earning that minimum wage and have excuses for not having enough money, and you're talking about what they were taught when it comes to education, you do realize that mostly half of them went to a school that were lowly funded, literally like $0 funded, like at all when it came to the local government funding that school based on the neighborhood that they lived in. When you look at that, that is the reason why that most of United States Americans that are living on a minimum wage can't find
Mr.
a
D.
full-time
Christopher, you're
part-time.
done. You're done with your rebuttal. Would President Martinez like to rebuttal?
I'd like a rebuttal and then an additional 5 seconds for a suggestion to the moderators afterward, if possible.
Okay. Your time starts now.
Again, it goes back to making sure people are qualified for the job. And if we're going to talk about, like my opponent said, you know, first of all, I don't know what school is publicly funded $0. Because if it's a public school and they're being funded $0, they have no way to operate. So I don't know where that number is coming from. But if we are going to continue onward of making assumptions about people that, you know, are making $12 an hour, working 12 hours a week, I'm not saying that they're lazy.
Okay.
I'm not saying that we need to get a job. I'm saying we need to do further research to understand why we're in
Your
that
time has
situation.
expired. Your time was.
All right, can we go to the last question already?
Yes, my suggestion to the moderators. Can we have the next debate be sponsored by Tylenol?
Yes.
Because I have a headache. Thank you.
That might be breaking a that might be breaking. I forget which clause. I don't know. That might be
Okay, go ahead and prosecute me.
Anyway, Mr. D. Christopher, would you like?
I'm only joking, Sam. You're all good. Oh my lord.
No, not
Okay.
much rebuttal. I'm done. Like, this is just ridiculous.
All right, let's just go to
Okay,
closing
we're
statements.
going to move
Honestly,
on. We're going to move on to the next issue of the day.
I swear to God, no. We just go into
this
closing
question-
statements.
Closing statements whenever I decide. I research these questions, and you're damn sure that I'm going to ask them. This question
Well, I did not
comes
have 2
from
hours.
a
Let's-
Miami, Florida resident, Gilbert Placeres. Her question is, his question, excuse me, is: as young people, we face a difficult economic future. Student debt is astronomical. Homeownership has been inaccessible in many places, and climate change will play increasing costs in our communities. My question is, What will you do to ensure that young people will see themselves thriving in the future of this country? That question is going to Mr. D. Christopher first. Mr. D. Christopher?
Again,
Yeah,
can you
before.
please repeat that question? You are cutting out badly.
I heard him perfectly fine.
Absolutely. Repeat the question. This question comes from a Miami resident, Gilbert Paceres. His question is, as young people, we face a difficult economic future. Student debt is astronomical, home ownership has been inaccessible in many places, and climate change will play an increasing cost in our communities. My question is, what will you do to ensure young people see themselves thriving in the future of this country?
Why you ask? Well, number one, student loan cancellation. That is a big thing. We have Americans that are graduating college that have student loans as high as $100,000, and they will have to pay it like literally for the rest of their life. And while they are not finding jobs.
Ooh, child.
Ding.
Mr. D. Christopher?
I can't really interrupt if he's on mute.
Good point. Good point.
Mr. D. Christopher, has your connection? Oh, looks like his connection. In the meantime,
Hello? He's back.
Okay, you're back. Yes. Continue,
I'm
please.
sorry, someone was on my phone.
Okay.
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 Saying, so when it comes to student loan, again, Americans are getting, are having $100,000 of student loans. Well, some of them, not all of them, of course. And they will have to pay that for like literally the rest of their lives, depending on how long they live. And when it comes to graduating after college, do you know how hard it can be for a college graduate to find a job after they graduate college, depending on what degree they get? So that's one problem that we do have to look into and find a solution for.
Okay. Is that your? That's
Yes.
your answer, Mr.
Yes.
Martin. Your time starts now.
Yes, the student loan crisis, something me and Michael were very familiar with.
Oh yes.
Yes, quite lovely little things they are. Well, in terms of what we've done already, we've lowered the federal interest rate on student loans to 2.85% for undergrad and 3.29% for graduate students, which is significantly under what they currently are. So that's, a very good thing. We're going to be providing education to people at very low rates, whereas people be dropping like flies. Hashabia Bosi. Anyway, the interest rates are at record lows, which means that people are going to be paying simply their debt with very little interest on their loans themselves. And, it's something that we need to be looking to address. Quite frankly, the college cost in America is quite inflated. I think most people would agree with that. And part of that is because of student loans. So we're going to curb limits correct in the admissions departments across the country. And we're going to make sure that public colleges, in terms of institutions, are free nationwide. That's something we're going to get done very quickly. We're also going to make sure that in-state, out-of-state tuition is not a thing, because it's simply a plan to profit off of people that are not in that state. So those are two very specific and very targeted ideas and policies in terms of lowering the cost of higher education. And it's something that we look
Okay, your
forward
time has
to
expired.
very soon.
Your time has expired. Any rebuttals? Okay, we're going to move on. The following question is only directed towards Wyatt D. Christopher. However, President Martinez will get 30 seconds to rebut whatever D. Christopher says. We only get one rebuttal. And this question is specifically directed towards Wyatt D. Christopher. We received this question. Let me find it over here. Okay. Okay. Shannon Cresswell, an African American voter from the state of Pennsylvania, said she switched from being a Democrat to an independent due to the DNC's failures on the current platform. And she wanted to ask, quote, if you were the nominee, this is towards Mr. DeChristopher, how, as a de facto leader of the Democratic Party, would you do damage control, and how would you woo back people like herself, African American voters? Your time starts now. You get one chance to address the question.
That's a very excellent question. And one thing that I would do to fix that is to directly talk with voters and do a whole platform convention, I call it, to make sure that the undecided voters who are considering moving to the Democratic Party and members of the Democratic Party all have a voice inside our platform, so that can be reported down and that we can post that to the public. When it comes to our platform, I'm pretty sure that the Republican Party don't have a platform. If they do, then they do. But that's all that I know as of right now. But when it comes to that particular situation, as the Democratic nominee for president, I apologize for the party not having a platform, but there will be one soon, and your voice will be counted on it.
Okay. Remember, when we get this type of question, don't worry. Mr. Martinez will have his question. And this is not with the same dynamic. Mr. President, would you like to rebut what Mr. DeChristopher said?
No, I would just simply like to say the Republican Party does have a platform, but other than that, I mean, it's pretty specific to his base, so no, I guess I don't have a rebuttal.
Okay. The next question goes to President Martinez. The same dynamic as the last question. Earlier this year, we had an international crisis related with the U.S. diplomatic mission in Peru. At the end of the debacle, only 79 out of the 112 high-level diplomats being held hostage by the Shining Path were rescued. 25 of those high-ranking officials were slaughtered. How can the American people believe that you're committed to the safety of Americans abroad when situations such as this develop while you're in charge?
Well, I mean, the situation that we had in Peru occur is simply quite tragic. We've addressed the situation multiple times. We did our best given the resources we had available at the time. And, if we had to do it again, the only change I would make was to be more aggressive with our strike and simply, take out more of the people that held our American citizens. It's very different in terms of an embassy and a residence. An embassy is American soil on a foreign land. When it comes to a residence, it's not necessarily the same set of laws. That's something that's not often discussed. So in terms of Americans abroad, we can look at the travel restrictions and travel safety procedures we give to people who travel abroad from our international airports every day. We've kept people very safe. We've made sure that we have very good relations with a number of countries, and we're going to be opening up diplomatic relations soon with a couple more countries that we haven't had the best relationships with. And, our administration is very committed. We have a very dedicated Secretary of State, a very dedicated State Department as a whole. And we're very dedicated in terms of making sure that people get to where they need to be, as well as making sure they're safe while they're there. Now, that doesn't mean we can provide a bodyguard if you take your trip to London every year, but we're going to make sure we have diplomatic ties with folks in London, Paris, wherever you may end up going, to make sure that if something were to happen to you, we have the proper resources.
Okay. President Martinez, your time has expired. Would Mr. DeChristopher like a rebuttal?
Yes.
You get 30 seconds, and then we're moving on to the last issue, and then to closing statements. You got 30 seconds. The floor is yours.
Mr. President, it literally took the White House 6 days to respond to the Peru situation. I don't care what excuse you have for responding for 6 days, but you need to apologize for the 11 families who loved ones are now dead because of your slow timed action.
Okay, is that the rebuttal?
Am I expected to respond to that?
Also, for the record, no, I already set out the rules for this
Right.
part of the debate.
That's what I thought.
We're going to move on to the last issue, the issue of healthcare. First of all, I would like to ask who here supports a single-payer healthcare? Nobody? Who here supports a public option?
I do.
No? You do? Okay. Well, the question that pertains to public option is the following. Starting in 2014, people over 55 buying insurance through newly created exchanges, that is, people without access to group coverage eligible for an existing government plan, could choose Medicare. But what happened before then, the plan is to make Medicare available to workers older than 55 starting in 2011, which is great since this is an initiative that the government can and should get up and running as fast as possible to pursue. But it's not clear yet whether during those years only people that qualify high risk because of pre-existing medical conditions would have the option of if it's just programmed for high risk people, and if, as I expect, the new Medicare funds are treated separately, that turn the new program into a dumping ground for sick patients. In other words, there is a chance that a public option would end up in disaster. So my question is, how would you prevent a public option from becoming a quote-unquote dumping ground for high-risk individuals who cannot afford a private health insurance, and on top of that, have pre-existing conditions or are more prone to sickness? How would you prevent the public option from becoming a dumping ground for those types of patients? That question goes first to Mr. Wyatt, and then we'll go to Mr. Martinez.
Okay, so when it comes to a public option system, I actually answered this question for this debate with the Washington Herald. Is that when it comes to Medicare for all, first of all, Medicare for all is too expensive. It costs way too much, and there's no way that we can just force Americans to drop their private insurance that they might already have, and have them be included in a free healthcare system. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but that's not something that people want, and that's not something that I want to get passed while being the president of the United States. When it comes to the public option system, it will basically be sort of like Medicare for all. It will be universal. That's what I meant to say, universal. It will be a universal public option for people who don't have healthcare already. So for those who do have healthcare, whether it is with a private insurance company, that's fine. But for those low-income families that do not have that, that will basically just implement them into the program. So when it comes to ways that we can stop it from being a dumpster fire, I believe, as you mentioned, first of all, we need to look at who is qualified to be put into this program. We can't just have people who are trying to fraud the U.S. government, which is a federal crime, and try to be in the program knowing that they do have insurance. That's something that
Your time has expired. Just for clarification, what would be the requirements to be eligible for the public option? Since you mentioned, since you brought that point up, what exactly would be eligible?
It's pretty simple. For those Americans that their income is only about $50,000 per year, and they're not able to afford healthcare, if they do not already have it. So Americans who don't have healthcare and make less than $50,000 a year to be able to afford another healthcare option.
And in terms of you use the term universal describing your public option plan.
Yeah.
I'm having trouble with that characterization because if it's public option, meaning that it's optional, then it doesn't necessarily mean that it's universal. It would be
But it
different
will
from
be
Social
under-
Security, where Social Security, no matter what was that?
I said it will be under my plan.
It would be universal, but also at the same time a public option.
Yeah, for like I said, when you ask for the requirements for those Americans who don't already have health insurance and make less than $50,000 a year, it will be universal.
Okay, Mr. Martinez, would you like a rebuttal?
No. I'm good.
Are you sure you don't know? Okay, whatever.
Yeah, it's not worth my
That
time.
is well. Okay. We're going to closing statements now.
Oh, I thought you were going to ask me my stance on healthcare. That's why I was not giving a rebuttal.
Closing statements.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right. Yes, your stance on healthcare. Your stance on healthcare.
Right. Contrary to popular belief, I do think Obamacare is a somewhat decent system, so we'd be carrying it over some aspects of it. But what our administration is looking to do, and we're working with the vice president as well as a couple of governors and senators, is to get a repeal and replace taken care of for Obamacare. And what we're going to make sure is we're going to take out the individual mandate for small businesses because it's killing small businesses on their bottom line and their ability to operate, which if we take out that mandate, will increase employment and it will decrease costs for businesses. And it will allow more small businesses to open up. That's number one. Number two, we're looking to protect more people, especially those in the high-risk pool. And we're going to create a system that does that simultaneously. We're going to make a system that lowers prescription drug costs, which is a big, big factor that people don't realize. And I'm actually working with our Department of Justice to look into the legality of making sure that hospitals are not able to price gouge patients while they're receiving care. I don't think it's necessary for an IV tube to cost in excess of $300. I don't think anyone would justify that. So we're going to look into profiteering, whether that is through the insurance companies themselves or the hospitals. We're going to make sure that that stops immediately. And if these insurance companies or hospitals need to do so, we may revoke their license to practice, whether as a medical facility or as an insurer in the United States. And we are going to prosecute. So we're going to do consumer protection. That's the biggest aspect of this, not necessarily healthcare, but consumer protection.
Mr. President, your time is expired. Any rebuttals? This is your last chance for a rebuttal. No rebuttals? Okay. We're now going to the closing statements. Mr. Martinez, you go first. Your time starts now.
Well, I should be able to see.
Your time starts now.
We're here at the end of this little debate, and this is number 1 of 3, as I've been told by our moderator over here, Mr. Walker. I think this was an interesting debate, to say the least. It proved many of our competencies, and many of the incompetencies of our opponent here. And, we look forward to running a long campaign, a rigorous campaign, and a campaign that's focused on the truth and ensuring that the American success we built upon only continues for another 4 years. So we're looking forward to a successful pathway to victory, once again, to the White House. And we are glad to have many people, whether you vote for us or not, along for the ride.
All right. Mr. D. Christopher, your closing statement. Your time starts now.
In the words of St. Thomas Aquinas, an unjust law is a human law that is not rooted in eternal and natural law. That was included in MLK's letter from a Birmingham jail. That quote basically means that any law that is not rooted on the basis of doing the morally right thing is an unjust law. Mr. Martinez's presidency has been nothing but rooted on the basis of passing unjust laws to bring down the American people. The president says America first, but what has he actually done to achieve that agenda? What has he done to improve education in this country? What has he done to improve healthcare in this country? What has he done to address our climate crisis in this country? What has he done to stop homelessness in this country?
Okay.
Sam has been president for 4 years, and yet he has not addressed those issues except for make excuses in the debate that you are now watching. President Martinez and Vice President McCann is simple. They are cowards. They are being selfish. They're not looking out for you. Instead, they're looking out for themselves. And when it comes to being the president of the United States, President Martinez is instead acting like a dictator.
No.
President Martinez, it's about time that we vote you out of the White House, and you will be voted out of the White House because millions of Americans are tired of your incompetence in the
Okay,
White House
Mr.
and
Christopher,
not
your
being
time has
able to
expired.
lead a country.
Time has expired.
All right.